In 1995, 10 years after the third Mad Max movie, Hollywood tried to recreate that magic, but with a new twist. That movie starred Kevin Costner and would be called Waterworld. It would be not only the most expensive movie made at the time with a budget of $175 million, but also a disappointment. A world completely flooded with ice caps, a society built on scraps, mutants with gills, jet ski pirates. It sounds exciting, fresh, and full of potential, and it should have been. That's why today I want to talk about what it gets right, what it gets wrong, and how one scene made me rethink its potential and made me wish that we got so much more from this world. For those of you who are unfamiliar, Waterworld takes place on our world, Earth, a few hundred years after our current time when all the polar ice caps have melted. As you can imagine, this has caused sea levels to rise significantly, so significantly in fact that they have flooded the entire world with water, hence the name of the movie. This means that food is hard to come by, dirt even more so, and ironically, on a world flooded with water, any that's drinkable is worth its weight in gold. Our main character, played by Kevin Costner, is simply called the Mariner. You can add this story to the list of ones that I reviewed with unnamed protagonists. The mutation in his DNA has caused him to have gills, which allow him to breathe underwater, as well as webbed feet that make him a much more agile swimmer. Based on the way that other characters talk about him, we know that he is not the only mutant in this world, but he is the only one we will see. The destruction of society on Earth caused by the flooding has led to several different factions forming. And here is as good a time as any to talk about the similarities between Waterworld and Mad Max. Firstly, the movie has the same cinematographer as the second Mad Max movie, Dean Semler, but the real nail in the coffin about the similarities between the movies is that one of the writers actually stated that the idea for a movie came from a conversation he had had with the founder and CEO of the Motion Picture Corporation of America about specifically Mad Max ripoffs, and also named Mad Max as one of the primary inspirations for the movie. So while any factual comparisons between the movies that I could make would seem surface level, if you watch the movie knowing these two facts that I've just shared, you can definitely see that the inspiration was there. Besides the obvious continuous search for water, both movies have antagonists that are warlords that are seeking to control critical resources, which is just classic post-apocalyptic stuff. In the case of Waterworld, those are the smokers, the only faction that uses gas-powered machinery in Waterworld. They have jet skis, planes, and machine guns, and they all live on an aircraft carrier which they row with oars like a Viking longship. The central premise of the movie is the search for a mythical place that they call Dryland. Not a very inventive name in my opinion, but it definitely gets the point across. Specifically, the smokers are searching for a girl who has tattoos on her back that are supposedly coordinates to this mythical Dryland. That little girl's name is Enola, and she will be one of the main characters in our story. The Mariner is unaware of their search for the girl and doesn't really even believe in Dryland anyways. He's just minding his own business, trading at an atoll, which is like a city in the middle of the water. But while he is trading in the city, the people realize that he is a mutant and they capture and imprison him. While he is imprisoned at the atoll and about to be executed, the smokers attack looking for the little girl Enola, who lives at this atoll, and her guardian Helen agrees to break the Mariner out if he will take her and the little girl away from the smokers. Now don't get me wrong, the Mariner is not your typical knight in shining armor. He is not doing this out of the goodness of his heart to save this woman and this girl. He doesn't really care about them at all. In fact, he just feels like he owes them a debt and so continues to let them live on his ship. His character is both a strength and a weakness to this movie. He is at the core kind of your stereotypical action movie character. He is a killer who doesn't care about anyone, and then over the course of the movie becomes more soft-hearted and starts to care about the people around him. The strength of this is that it gives him an actual arc, even if it is a stereotypical one. He is a mutant and obviously a very lonely guy who has kind of been cast out by what is left of society because of his mutant status. and so has become very cold-hearted and adept at violence, not really having learned to trust anyone. By the end, he even falls in love with Helen, as you might expect, and starts to care for Enola a lot, which gives him this great arc of personal growth. The bad part about this is that the level of change that they give him throughout the movie is kind of unbelievable. He almost sells Helen's womanhood to another passing sailor for some copies of a National Geographic, and he throws Enola over the edge into the water because she won't listen, even though she's a little girl and she can't swim. They also never really show the passage of time, so I think this movie takes place over the course of about a week, and that would be an extremely accelerated timeline for a complete personality change. Now, there is a pretty logical reason that this could be. The original movie was supposed to be about 3 hours long, with the theatrical cut being cut down to about 2 hours and 15. Apparently, after the disappointing performance of Kevin Costner's last 3-hour movie, Wyatt Earp, the studio didn't think that a movie of that length featuring Kevin Costner could perform well, and so they forced the director to cut almost a third of the original screen time. At some point years later, Kevin Costner must have won them back over because he would eventually make Dances with Wolves, which is around a 3-hour movie and is an incredible movie, which you should check out if you haven't seen it. After they escape, him and the two girls head out into the ocean to get away from the smokers. They are attacked by the smokers a few times, and they obviously butt heads a lot, as I mentioned before, but the woman and Enola start to grow on him. Eventually, Enola is kidnapped by the smokers while Helen and the mariner are away from the ship. There's a bunch of action scenes where Kevin Costner goes over to the smokers' aircraft carrier and kicks their ass and saves Enola. The three of them and a few of their friends end up finding dry land after he saves Enola, where they find Enola's parents' skeletons in their old hut. Now, we knew Enola was from dry land, but the fact that her parents are skeletons and dead in the first place definitely leaves some timeline questions that are unanswered, but I think, again, this probably would have been explained by some of the 45 minutes that were cut out of the movie, so I'm not going to be too hard on it for that. But for some reason, the story writers made the decision to have the mariner leave dry land, even though he's now falling in love with Helen and they both care about Enola a lot, so they've kind of assembled them as like a small family. They justify this by saying that he's like part fish, so he's not comfortable on land, which I guess makes logical sense, but does feel a little bit forced. Either way, he ends up going back off to sea, leaving Helen, Enola, and their friends safe on dry land. There's obviously more to this story. I mean, it's like over a 2-hour movie, but that's kind of the gist of the plot. For those of you who have seen the movie, you might have noticed that I left out a very noteworthy and spectacular scene, and that was on purpose because it is the main reason that I wanted to make this video, and also probably what led the movie to have such a large budget. After Helen and our main character have started to fall for each other, he takes her down in this bubble that he has constructed to see the flooded world below. Obviously, the special effects in this scene don't hold up very well, but considering that this movie was made 30 years ago, I like to think they're pretty damn good. Seeing the flooded world below is really what made me want to talk about this movie and to talk about the world building specifically. The moment we have under the water with both of them where he's lighting flares so they can see because they're so deep underwater, and we as the audience are just looking at this creepy, deserted, completely flooded New York City is just incredible. It really just made me rethink the entire movie and what it could have been with this scene, because besides this scene, the rest of the movie takes place completely above water. I understand why this is the case, because obviously shooting underwater is problematic at the best of times, and CGI, even though there is some in this movie, was far from what it is now. But the coolest thing about the movie is that it takes place on this world that is flooded with water, and the coolest part about water is that you can go under it. and we do the least exciting thing with water, which is float on top of it for almost the entire movie. The way the movie was written, you could replace the water with desert, make the mariner a mole person, and it would be Mad Max crossed with X-Men, and you could still have almost the exact same plot. That's how little the water actually matters to the story. That being said, I love the idea of Waterworld, and I think that the plot leaves so much of it unexplored. If this movie hadn't been affected so much by producers cutting in literally, they could have done so much with this world in further iterations. Or even in the modern day, if they could pick it up as like a series on Max or like Apple TV or something. There could be a society of divers that dive down beneath the surface and retrieve technology and then recreate it above water. You could have people who live completely underwater but don't have gills like the mariner and pipe air down from the surface that would create this very interesting society that is like a hybrid of water breathing and not water breathing people. You could have a group of mutants like our main character who can also breathe underwater and have different variations of the mutation and have designs to take over the world and be its new rulers. You could have a religious cult that believes the earth is flat and all the water is eventually going to fall off the sides, and so is constantly preparing themselves to readjust to terrestrial life. I mean, the possibilities are honestly almost endless for what you could do with this interesting world, and they even build kind of a good base for it in what we do have of this movie. They have their own currency, their own swear words, their own innovative way of surviving by doing things like growing plants with their recycled urine. They built these giant atolls, assumedly there's more than one, that hold like villages full of people. Also, as a side note, the atoll in this movie really reminds me of Megaton from Fallout 3. I think it's all the ramps and stuff that they have on the sides, but anyways, just a side note, and let me know if you also see the connection. Kevin Costner also has this insane ship with all these cool mechanisms that make the like sail of the ship retract and expand, and also he's got this like spinny thing that looks kind of like a wind turbine that seems like it uses the power of the wind to either propel the ship or like power some of his devices. If they wrote a book series taking place in this world, I would definitely read it. The movie isn't that great, and honestly I like it regardless of that, and if you've never seen it, you should check it out because if nothing else, it's interesting. Waterworld is not a fantastic movie at the end of the day, and it could have been like a fresh new take on a dystopian world that could have, I think, spawned at least a small franchise, but instead it just ended up being Mad Max on water. If you've made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you have any feedback or any books, movies, games that you'd like me to talk about, feel free to leave it in the comments below. If you liked the video and you want more, consider subscribing, and don't forget to hit that like button on the way out. I'll see you guys next time.